I'm here with our newest pro staffer, Bill. He's new to bow hunting, but we're going to try to teach him as much as we can today, right?
So I've got a lot of questions.
No, Bill and I are going to talk about, we're going to reflect back on this past fall, and obviously we didn't see his videos, but killed a good buck in Northeast Iowa, and we're just going to talk about that and some of the lessons we both learned this past fall killing good deer. So just kind of jump into it. It was on your lease up in Northeast Iowa,
Yeah.
right?
So if you go back to, I think it was last spring, I was talking about selling the farm and kind of getting back to my roots. And the whole goal there of selling that was to get back closer to home, so I could spend more time around my parents and family, rather than spending all my time, where I was on that farm in southern Iowa. I could hopefully replace it with something up north. And I wasn't able to purchase anything, although I did try pretty hard, to replace the one that we sold. So I ended up with a lease there, and it's a good area. I mean, it's a neighborhood that I used to hunt, clear back when I was a kid. 30 some years ago, I hunted that area, but there was not the kind of deer back then that there is now. But
did you hunt that specific farm or just that area?
I hunted the farm next to it.
Okay.
There's a block there with, it's several square miles with no roads through it. And I had permission on that whole block other than just a couple of farms. And it was nothing back when I was a kid to get permission. I was fourth generation on both sides of my family, and mom and dad both came from different sides of the town, so I had almost the whole county covered. And if I wasn't related, there were people that I knew, anyway. So I had permission before I moved to southern Iowa. I had permission on 62 farms, and I had been told I was 62 of 63. I had one guy tell me no, and I was like flabbergasted and brokenhearted. It's like, how could you tell me no, So this was one of those properties that bordered one of the ones that I had permission on and had hunted some way back then.
And today it'd probably be one of 63.
Yeah, I mean, up there I would do better up there for sure, but if you didn't have family and friends to fall back on, it'd be way harder, obviously. A lot of it's getting leased. Leasing is really taken off, which kind of surprised me, because when I was a kid, there wasn't hardly any leasing going on, and now it's like the most prevalent way that the land is used in that area. So anyway, it was fun to get back home and see mom and dad, and my dad, and I'm sure he wasn't trying to hurt my feelings, but at one point he said, "Boy, I've seen you more this year than the last 10 years put together." And I thought, oh, that means I did a bad job
Makes
for
you
10
feel
years.
bad, but that's cool though. I mean,
Yeah. So that was the whole point, was getting back, and so it was a really nice deer. I mean, we can talk about the deer and how that transpired and what happened there, but that was kind of the background of what happened after we sold the land. And just for me, we've talked about it some too, that the demands of running Midwest whitetail and the demands of being in front of the camera all the time just wore me down, and I got so burned out that my vision for the business, my ability to relate to people, all started to suffer. The first thing that goes when you get burned out are the relationships. You just don't want to deal with people, really, and you don't really want to come up with the next thing, because that means that you have to do the next thing. It's like, so that lack of vision and just how kind of grumpy I was getting and stuff, it told me that it was time for me to move away.
And I think it gets compounded too when you're trying to mix it with something you're so passionate about, like a hobby. When that becomes the business aspect of it, I think it compounds everything you just talk about. Yeah, because you really want it to be the way you remembered it. And I won't say that I ever didn't like hunting. I always loved hunting through the whole process, but it became part of the business. It wasn't the business, but every moment that you're out there with the cameraman, you're performing. And it's not just you relaxing and getting into a tree and kicking back and saying, "Oh, what a beautiful spot." It's about why you're there, which deer you're hunting, telling the story, keeping the viewers engaged, making it so it's interesting, for somebody to watch it, which is completely different in a lot of ways from just going deer hunting. I've always told people you have to draw from other sources too to keep you fueled, whether that's a true passion. For me, it's a passion for the videography side. And so that's what keeps me going. For others, maybe in your case, it was the education side, you know, being able to constantly teach people things and have an impact on other bow hunters. But I always think that you have to have something else other than just filming your hunts.
Yeah.
There has to be something you can draw from.
Right, because you'll burn out too quick on just filming your hunts. And you have to make money doing it. Everybody thinks, oh, they're getting paid to do that. You know, they shouldn't get paid to do that. Well, there's no way the Midwest Whitetail exists without people making money.
Right.
I mean, it's way too much work. So I felt like, you know, that was an unfair thing for people to say. But also, you know, to your point, somewhere along the way, you know, it's not enough. You know, you have to have something bigger. And for me, it was the education side because, you know, I came up through the ranks writing for magazines. So I felt like my role to the hunting industry was to help people to get better at their craft.
Right.
So Midwest Whitetail was just an extension of that.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit just about the hunt itself. This was a buck that you had pictures of?
Yeah.
When did you first get pictures of him?
I did the same thing up there that I've always done on my farm in southern Iowa. Was I would start running cameras after I felt like the bucks had dispersed out of their summer ranges into their fall ranges. And you know, some people like to run cameras, excuse me, you know, 12 months out of the year, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, you know, Bentley's trying to make an entry into the video too, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the information that you gain outside of that fall range dispersal, you know, it's not really that useful.
Right.
It's just more for fun. But as soon as they shed their velvet and the bucks break up their bachelor groups, they start dispersing into their fall ranges, and that's when I start running cameras. So I started in probably mid-September, and I was surprised when I drove around the property and scouted it. I didn't see very much sign. You know, I thought, ooh, there's not very many deer here, you know. This could be interesting. But once I started running camera, there was a lot of bucks. And I was surprised at how many really nice 3- and 4-year-old bucks there were. You know, not very many old bucks. So I think it's just the nature of the beast. You know, on my farm, I could control that age structure a little bit better, but here you're subject to more random style of hunting around you. And, you know, you just didn't get that many bucks that were 4+. You know, a lot of nice 120 to 145 inch bucks, but very few really big deer as a percentage of the herd. So I knew it was going to be a fun fall. You know, I knew I was going to see bucks. And he was the biggest one. And interestingly, you know, he was the one, even though he was the biggest one, he was the one that seemed the hardest possibly to kill, because he wasn't showing any daylight activity on any of my cameras. But he was only staying on one part of the farm. He wasn't crossing over to cameras that I had on other parts. So I knew that he was fairly localized in where he lived. But he was coming into the areas where I had the cameras only at night. The upside to that was he always came from the same direction. So I had a pretty good idea where he was bedded.
Yeah.
And in that country, that bluff country like that, the deer bed high. They're up on the ridges and out on the points. You know, so it wasn't any really a stretch to figure out where that deer was bedded. He was coming from this direction. There's the ridge up there. He's probably bedding up on that ridge.
Yeah.
So I could pinpoint him down, and I ended up killing him on that ridge on an afternoon hunt, not a morning hunt. Typically, you'd hunt those bedding areas in the mornings, but you know, I snuck in there for an afternoon.
What day was it?
29th of October.
Okay.
And I ran cameras until about probably the 20th or so, and then kind of typical to the way that I did it, you know, on the other farm, I just said, okay, I know where they're at. You know, I'm not going to run camera all season long. So I pulled my cameras once I had a pretty good idea what was going on. But we had some really cold temperatures, if you remember, the last part of October, and that was really good. October was really good this past season.
The past 2 Octobers have been really good.
Yeah, and this past November was really bad, you know, until the very end of it, as you well know. I mean, you guys struggled through that. I was already tagged out, but so I went in on the afternoon of the 29th and snuck up on the ridge. And I'd say at least 2 hours before the end of legal shooting time, I was just kind of sitting there. You know, I didn't have any cameraman to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't have to worry about which tree I was going to cut down and which food plot I was going to make, because I didn't have any control over the property either.
Right.
So I don't know what I was thinking about. Maybe I was sleeping. But
good chance.
yeah, so I look up, and 25 yards away, here he comes. I'm like, oh. You know that feeling. That's what you bow hunt for, is that initial moment of rush. because it's got to be what the skydivers get and whatever other the adrenaline junkies get, is that first 3 or 4 seconds when you see it's like, oh, it's him. It's like your adrenaline just surges. And
go into you're just a different person, different mode, different mentality. Yeah. Just no doubt, like, I got to make this work, that kind of killer instinct.
Yeah, it's the rush that you get at that moment. And so I look up, and 25 yards away, there he is, just moseying his way toward me. I'm like, oh gosh, he's really big. It's got to be him. So I had to get stood up, and I had to get the bow in position because he was going to come by real close to the tree on my left side. There's no way I'm going to shoot that kind of an angle. And I didn't really know that. He was coming straight at the tree, I guess. I didn't want to take a chance that he might go on the right. So I made sure I stood and got stood up, got my bow in position, and I no more than got the bow in position and drawn that he was 10 yards away already and still coming. So
it's nice not to have to ask anybody if they're on him or anything.
That's right. Didn't have to worry that the cameraman was going to spook him. Yeah. And I'm not sure that I could have killed that deer if there had been 2 of us. I really don't know. I mean, I didn't have very many experiences over the years where the cameraman cost me a buck, but that might have been one of them there. Just by how he was coming in and how late it was that I saw him. I mean, he was already 25 yards coming when I saw him.
Right.
So we would have had to do an awful lot of scrambling to get that set up, for video. Plus, he'd had to come around me, with the camera, and it would have been pretty messy, I think. So that might have been one of those rare cases over the years where the camera would have cost me a really good buck.
What was it like after the shot? You're not having to, just being by yourself. I'm sure it was a lot different experience.
Yeah, it was pretty fun, really. I mean, there was a home football game in my hometown, so I shot the deer and I climbed down and talked to one of the local farm boys and said, hey, I'm going to come back and get this deer probably tomorrow morning. Do you want to go with me? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. So I went up to town and watched the football game, and hung out with, friends and family that night and came back. And I actually, there aren't a lot of coyotes there, but I didn't want to take a chance of the coyotes getting him. Mm-hmm. So I pulled my truck out into the field down below the little ridge there where I'd shot him. And I had a cot, like an army cot, that I set in the back of the truck, climbed in there with my sleeping bag and everything. It was probably 25 degrees and 15-mile-an-hour wind. And I'm curled up in the back of that truck out in the open field, which was pretty cool. But I didn't want the coyotes to get him.
Did you sleep at all that night?
I slept a little bit, not much. I was mostly just listening. And I mean, I heard coyotes howling, but nowhere near, where that deer went to.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to. Heck, I didn't have a cameraman. I didn't have a guy that was going to be saying, I don't want to lay out there in the,
right.
It was kind of cool. So then the next morning I went and grabbed the young farm kid, and he's not a kid, but young man, and we went and got the deer out, and it was just way more laid back, I guess, than, obviously the way we do it with all the formalities with doing it on video.
Yeah. Was your approach any different this year with regards to, so you're hunting a property that you don't own, you don't know the bucks, when you got pictures of that deer, were you targeting him specifically and only him, or were you open to shoot any random mature deer? Did your mentality change as opposed to what it used to be?
I don't think so. Obviously I wasn't naming deer because I didn't have to carry a story.
There
was probably 2 or 3 there that I was primed for, and he was the number one, and then there was a couple other ones that were older deer probably that were on the list as well. So it wasn't so much about, I don't think my approach changed. It's fun to pick the certain deer and hunt those deer, even if it's not to carry a story.
Yeah.
It's just for the fun of being out there doing it.
And it's your own story, even if you're not sharing it. It's still the excitement, and that's one thing. That's why I asked the question. In my mind, that's one thing that I don't think will ever change for me. I've become so addicted to that, just learning the individual personalities of a deer and the challenge of targeting one specific deer. Obviously, that's what I did this past fall. And,
let's talk about your deer. I mean, enough about mine. It was an exciting hunt. Felt really good to be back home again. It didn't bother me that it wasn't filmed. I think it bothered some people, but it didn't bother me. So now we're on your story.
Yeah, I mean, mine's a little different because people got to watch the whole thing. We were able to really document everything, and that's where I said earlier, but that's where my passion lies in this, is even if 0 people watched it, I still love being able to go back and relive. I mean, every buck I've killed since, I don't know, mid 2000s or 2007 or something like that, I can go back and watch, and I love that just for me. But this deer this past fall, it was one of the better examples, in my opinion, of being able to document the entire thing, a 2-year journey, every encounter, every slow hunt after that deer, and just all the pieces to putting it together. And it's one of those rare occasions, as we know, having done this for so long, that it actually works out, especially at the very end, the closing chapter, the kill. It seems like there's always something that happens, and to be able to pull off something really high quality like that, again, that's my passion, is creating the best quality, was really cool, and obviously one I won't forget, and it was fun to kind of share that with everyone that was watching too.
I thought what was cool about that, I think maybe what surprised me the most was what you got away with at the end. And I think it was just the fact that maybe he couldn't believe that there could be danger that close or something. There had to have been some kind of mentality in that buck that he didn't react to your movement quite as abruptly as maybe I thought he might. I mean, what do you think happened there?
No, that's exactly it. You could see it in his eyes. Like if you watch it, it was almost like I'm screwed. Like it was just like that. You could kind of look and see that when he looked. And that was one of the most bittersweet moments of my history of hunting, really, to kill that deer and kill it that way, just because it was the culmination of such a chase and a journey that, I mean, again, I don't think I can do it justice by telling the story, even though we did a pretty good job of that. Like no one will ever be able to experience what I experienced, and that was probably the saddest I've ever felt killing a deer too. Just knowing that he eluded me so many times, and he beat me so many times, and almost one of those chases you wish, while frustrating so many times and so often I was frustrated, it's one of those you wish could last forever. And it was just a really cool experience overall. Yeah,
I had that same sensation when I killed that G4 buck in 2012. I mean, I was relieved when the pressure was off at the moment of the shot, but I wasn't, like overjoyed at having killed the deer. It was more of you did what you came to do. But it wasn't like you were some champion of some kind of sport. It was more about this has been my motivation for several years to try to kill this deer, and now he's gone.
Right. Yeah, that's how I felt. It was like bittersweet's probably the best way I can describe it. It's I think it's oversaid sometimes, but it really is about respect for the game and the chase. And it was one of those hunts and journeys that included all of it, the ups and downs, and really I learned a lot chasing that deer. Obviously had to be creative, and I look forward to kind of applying that in future hunts and trying to challenge myself. That's for me, it's what it's about. It's not trying to kill the easiest target or anything like that.
Or
it's
just to make video to have something to show people. It's more about the quest.
Yeah, it really is, and that was the ultimate for sure. It'll be a hard one to top. Yeah, for sure. And I think the lessons that come from that is the fact that even though I would say that you're an experienced deer hunter, I'm an experienced deer hunter, and there's a lot of people on the staff that are experienced, the deer win most of the time. I mean, you think about all the encounters that you had with him where he got away, and then people think, oh, I mean, I failed, boo-hoo, well, you're going to fail most of the time. Right.
So you just have to accept that fact that that's bow hunting. You're in it as a loser.
That's true.
You're on the wrong side of the ledger. Yeah. If you want to be on the right side of the ledger, you have to carry a gun.
And you talked about the teaching. We still learn every single time out ourselves. Like even if we've killed a number of good deer, I mean, every single hunt you learn something, and it's more about someone learning just by watching what we do wrong most of the time, or occasionally what we do right. That's where the teaching comes from for me, because again, I don't have it figured out. I don't think there's very many people that have it all figured out. It changes all the time. And going back to chasing specific deer, sometimes you can apply past knowledge, but sometimes they challenge you in ways that you've never been challenged before. And that's
the fun of it, because they're all different. I mean, you can generalize young deer in certain categories and say this is the behavior of a 2-year-old. This is what 3-year-olds do.
Right.
But you get, 4, 5, 6, those age classes of bucks, and they start to become individuals, and you have to hunt them that way. And that's the fun part, is you have to figure out. It might take you 2 years to figure it out, before you finally say, okay, now I know this deer's weakness. Or he changes his behavior just enough to expose a weakness.
Right.
Sometimes they don't have any.
Right.
They can be really, really hard to kill for a while, and then all of a sudden they change, and they're like, oh, he's going right through here. I can get him there.
And that deer had there's a lot of lessons with that deer. He was I think the one thing I would define him as is kind of reclusive. He stayed off on his own so much, more than even when there are other bucks around or hot does around. He was never in the picture. And there were examples even after I killed him that kind of confirmed that. I talked to my taxidermist, and he said he had never seen a cape so perfect, especially in a late season deer. I mean, I killed him early in January. Usually a 6-plus-year-old buck, you're going to have some scars and stuff like that, and there's going to be hair missing. And I mean, he literally lived in a CRP field by himself, never was around other deer. He was just kind of a loner type deer, and I think it showed in the ways he traveled, the things he did, added to the challenge of trying to catch up with them, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's fun that each deer they have behaviors that are similar, but where they live and how they interact with their environment. I mean, every one is like a new puzzle. It's like pouring out all the pieces on the table. In year one, you might only get the edge made of the puzzle. Like when you're trying to put a puzzle together, you always take the edge pieces, the easy ones.
Yep.
You might only get the edge made year one, and you might be hunting that deer 40 plus days, and all you get is the edge.
And if you're like me, sometimes that's all you get. You just have all these all these empty puzzles sitting around.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. But that's the beauty of it, and I think that you hate to put it on a level where people that are hunting in some of the states with more pressure can't identify with it. But I think the way that you identify with that is in the areas where you live, a buck that's 1 year older than what most people kill, that's the buck that takes you to that next level.
It's all relative.
Yep. It's all relative. So if everybody's killing 2.5-year-old bucks where you live, then a 3.5-year-old is the same to you as what a 4 or 5 would be to us.
Yeah.
So you can make it practical, even if you're not hunting some of these great places that we get to hunt.
It is all relative, and I like to, when I just have personal conversations with people, I like to emphasize that just you hunt how you want to hunt with regards to your area, how much hunting time you have, what quality properties you have. I mean, all that stuff comes into play. You can't compare yourself to anyone. Hunting is not a level playing field.
No.
And I hate when people start to portray this kind of competition and trying to keep up with other hunters. It's just about finding the enjoyment for you in whatever your situation is.
Yeah, and I think that by us focusing more on age over the years and less on score, I think that helps too. Because it gives. And granted, we might be hunting 4 and 5-year-old deer, and somebody else might be hunting 2 and 3-year-old deer, but we're getting away from saying he scores this or he scores that.
Right.
You're focusing on something that everybody can attain, and that's an age.
Right.
Versus an antler size. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, and you grew up in Iowa, and it's like, gosh, I mean, we're better to grow up if you're going to hunt big deer. So if we're not killing big deer, there's really something wrong with us.
Yeah.
It's not that we're doing something special.
No. Yeah.
It's because we have an opportunity that other people don't have.
Very fortunate for sure.
Yeah.
Just the quality of land and quality of deer, but again, everything's relative. You can still find that same enjoyment that we have anywhere else if you go about it right. So,
Yeah.
Moving forward, I imagine you're probably gonna try to repeat this kind of experience, just kind of doing it on your own, not really having a cameraman with you, just kind of talk about what the future looks like.
I think that I'm going to try to find some way to continue to produce media for the hunting industry. That's always been, I guess, my passion. I grew up reading hunting magazines. I had a pile of hunting magazines in my bedroom that you couldn't even hardly see the floor. And I had this piece of fishing line that ran from the light switch underneath a pile of magazines over to my bed, and it was the heat didn't get to my bedroom. The heat ducts didn't, so it'd be so cold that I didn't want to get out from underneath the covers after I got done reading, turn the light off. So I spent every night reading hunting magazines from probably age 12 to, whenever. I never quit. Yeah. And then when I got, time to go to bed, I'd pull that little fishing line and the light switch would go off. And so for me, media is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's what I grew up on. I was addicted to it. I feel like I can't quit doing that. I have to produce something that's hopefully useful, and coming up with the exact format of what that is, I've got a few ideas. So I'm just going to keep it flexible. I don't want to have a cameraman with me in the tree, at least not now. Maybe someday I'll change my mind on that, but it was refreshing and relaxing, and people don't appreciate really what that is, to have to hunt that way all the time. Mm-hmm. It got towards the end where I would put up a tree stand. If I was out there by myself and putting up stands for myself and the cameraman, I'd put the first one up and I'd go, boy, I really don't want to put that other one up there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want that guy with me. Nothing against the person, they're great people. Yeah. I just don't want another guy with me. Mm-hmm. I just want to go up there and sit in that tree right there in that stand for 6 hours and not have to worry about, having a story to tell and being on the spot all the time. And, so it's, I don't think that the viewers, and not that we're complaining
right.
It's because it's a great business. I'd rather do this than anything else, but it's not the same as just going deer hunting.
Yeah. But having done it, it gives you an appreciation for what it is, because someone needs to create that. Like there's a lot of people that love to watch at it. It motivates them. I mean, I love watching good quality video. Yeah. And having done it myself for a long time now, I truly appreciate those guys that go out of their way and make sacrifice for their own hunting time, or even just sacrifice their chances of pulling stuff off, because it's so much harder when you add a cameraman to the mix. It's not hunting anymore, it's a different sport. Yeah. You have so many more challenges, so it gives you a true appreciation of quality content and what it takes to produce that.
And I just think that the viewers of Midwest Whitetail should appreciate what these guys are doing. I appreciate it. I'm a big fan still. I mean, I still watch every single episode and pay attention to, what these guys are seeing and what they're doing. I think it's awesome. And, I'm never going to stop being a fan. I'm just not going to be a contributor.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll find some ways, as we move forward to podcasts or something a little less intrusive, just to keep hearing your stories and what's going on with your hunting world and those types of things.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. So keep me in the loop, whatever you need. Obviously I haven't abandoned the viewers or you guys. It's just, for me it had to happen. I had to take a step away because it was just too much for too long. And now I've got the reset button, I've pushed it, and we'll kind of see what comes after this. But it was definitely necessary, and it was a fun season to just kind of, what would you say, take the pressure off and relax.
Completely understand that, but appreciate, and I've enjoyed sitting down and kind of chatting with you, and we'll hopefully do it again soon.
Sounds good. Yep. Thanks, Jared.
Yep.